Welcome to The Other Opinion, the channel where we don't shy away from those scary, less talked about perspectives that, often hold the most transformative insights. Today we're diving deep into a topic that touches pretty much everyone facing uncertainty: courage. We're looking at why so many of us, especially maybe in leadership roles, tend to hesitate or even just freeze up when things get chaotic. But here's the kicker. What if bravery isn't just some innate trait you're born with, but actually a skill you can learn and, practice? Our deep dive today pulls insights from a really fascinating piece in the Harvard Business Review. It's called "Now is the Time for Courage." Sure. It's written by Ranjay Gulati, who's a renowned professor at Harvard Business School. He, along with his colleagues Nitin Nodia and Franz Volgesogen, they've done extensive research into why fortune truly favors the brave, not necessarily the cautious.
Exactly. And what's really interesting here, the core mission today is to kind of challenge that common impulse, the one to just hunker down when things get tough. We're going to unpack 5 specific actionable strategies that, well, individuals and leaders can use to actively cultivate courageous behavior, even when the outcomes are, frankly, far from certain. And this isn't just about grand heroic gestures. It's more about making proactive, impactful choices when maybe others might just retreat.
Okay, yeah, let's definitely unpack this. But hang on, before we jump into Gulati's strategies, which sound pretty groundbreaking, if you're finding these other opinions insightful or maybe just thought-provoking, please remember to like this deep dive and leave a comment below with your other opinions on courage. We really want to hear them. And of course, subscribe to the Other Opinion channel so you don't miss our future explorations. Oh, and hey, maybe share this with a friend who you think might need a little dose of boldness right now. So think about it for a second. When things feel unstable, you know, politically, economically, maybe huge tech shifts, what do you often see leaders do? Well, there seem to be 3 main reactions, right? They freeze, just hoping to wait out the chaos. Or they retrench, kind of pulling back to protect what they have. It feels like a natural human response, doesn't it? It's rooted in fear. But is it actually the best response?
That's the really important question Galati's research digs into. And maybe surprisingly, it's often not the best approach. In fact, a small but significant percentage of companies actually thrive by doing the opposite. His study looked back at, I think it was 4,700 public companies across 3 different recessions, and it found that about 9% of them actually emerged stronger. And it wasn't just because they slashed costs ruthlessly. These companies, they simultaneously took calculated risks to invest in growth. It really shows the significant difference courage makes in business. It can become a real competitive advantage.
Right, so it's not about being reckless, it's about calculated boldness.
Yeah.
Okay. But what exactly is courage in this context? How does Gulati define it?
Well, he defines it as a willingness to take bold, potentially risky action, but in service of a purpose you see as worthy. And usually you're doing this in the face of fear.
So it's not about the absence of fear. That's key.
Exactly. It reminds me of that Nelson Mandela quote, courage isn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over it.
Yeah, that's powerful. You can think of big examples like Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky standing firm, or maybe closer to home, that everyday bravery, like the Taj Hotel staff during the Mumbai attacks, putting guest safety first despite immense personal danger. It's acting despite the fear.
And that distinction from just, say, risk management is really crucial. A lot of experts advocate for traditional risk management, careful cost-benefit analysis, right? And that's vital when risks are identifiable, when outcomes are somewhat predictable. But there's research, like Frank Knight's work, that highlights situations under what we call VUCA conditions. That's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. In those cases, the outcomes are genuinely unknown, not just risky in a quantifiable way. And your standard risk assessment tools, they just don't cut it.
Okay, so when the usual playbook doesn't apply.
That's exactly when fear often triggers paralysis or that flight response. Leaders just freeze because they don't know what calculation to make. Brave leaders, though, in those same moments, they somehow reclaim their agency. They choose to fight, maybe seeing opportunity where others only see threat.
Reclaiming agency in chaos. I like that. So Gulati didn't just identify this. He actually spent years investigating what drives this courageous behavior.
He did, and he's managed to distill it down into 5 key strategies. And the exciting part is, he argues these are things that anyone can learn and deploy. It's not just for CEOs or presidents.
Okay, fantastic. Let's dive into the first one then. What's strategy number 1?
All right, strategy 1, create a positive narrative. This is all about the stories we tell ourselves, isn't it? How our internal monologue shapes our actions.
Precisely. Our narratives have a profound influence on our sense of self and our ability to act bravely. If you tell yourself it's impossible, well, it probably will be. So Gulati points to a tactic here he calls risk hunting, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, maybe?
Hunting for risk doesn't
Uh-huh.
sound very positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not about seeking out danger. It's about proactively engaging with potential risks, identifying them, understanding them, maybe mitigating parts of them. By doing this, you sort of demystify the unknown. You make the chaos seem less daunting, more navigable. You feel more capable. Larry Fink at BlackRock is a great example. He basically built his business around understanding and managing risk, even developing their Aladdin platform. He actively looks for signals, even big macro ones like the gap between uninvested capital and global infrastructure needs. He uses these signals to build positive stories that inspire action, which arguably led to some of BlackRock's big moves, like those acquisitions in late 2024.
Okay, so you identify the monsters under the bed to realize they're maybe not so scary, or at least you know what they look like. Makes sense. Was the second tactic under narrative?
It's about finding a moral quest.
A moral quest, like being a hero.
Kind of, yeah. It means recasting potentially risky decisions as a noble pursuit, something aligned with deeply held values. This gives people and teams a greater sense of purpose, belonging, self-worth. And that makes it easier to overcome fear.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
Like the Facebook whistleblower, Frances Haugen. She framed her actions not just as leaking documents, but as saving lives endangered by, the company's choices.
Exactly. Or think about Helena Folks when she was at CVS. They made that huge decision to stop selling tobacco products. That meant sacrificing, like $2 billion in sales? But they framed it as aligning with their healthcare mission and their pharmacists' moral principles. It created immense internal pride and resolve.
Wow. And I guess this can also connect to faith or belief systems.
Absolutely. For many people, calling upon their faith, whether it's belief in God, fate, luck, whatever, acts as a really powerful adaptive coping mechanism. There are studies showing entrepreneurs, for instance, often pray more or believe in an engaged higher power. Think of historical figures like Rockefeller or Sam Walton, or even Indra Nooyi, the former PepsiCo CEO. She apparently kept a statue of Ganesha in her office and said it made her feel somehow invincible during really tough times, like the 2008 financial crisis. And that feeling, that resilience, arguably emboldened her push towards healthier products, her purpose with performance strategy.
It's amazing how much our internal world shapes our external actions. That narrative piece is huge. Hey, if you're finding these insights valuable, if this is sparking something for you, do us a favor and hit that like button. And please, drop a comment below. What other opinions do you have on how narrative impacts courage? And seriously, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the Other Opinion channel. We dive deep like this all the time. Okay, strategy number 2. What's next after narrative? Strategy 2. Cultivate confidence. This sounds straightforward, but it's maybe deeper than just believing in yourself.
It is. Gulati links it to the psychologist Albert Bandura's concept of self-efficacy, which isn't just general self-esteem, it's more specific. It's the belief you have the capability to execute the actions needed to succeed in a particular situation, even a complex one. Feeling equipped, basically.
Okay, so how do you build that specific confidence, that self-efficacy?
Yeah.
Well, a huge part of it is deliberate training, practice. Really drilling down on skills until the best practices become almost second nature, instinctive. Think about Captain Sullenberger landing that plane on the Hudson River. His training hadn't specifically covered a dual engine failure at that altitude.
Right, it was unprecedented.
Exactly. But as he put it, his entire life had been preparation to handle that particular moment. All that simulation, all that practice, it kicked in automatically under immense pressure. Or think back to the Taj Mahal Palace employees during that attack. They had this really intensive 18-month onboarding, this deep-seated guests-first culture. That training allowed them to act bravely and protect customers, falling back on what they knew.
So deep practice builds reflexive competence. But it's not just technical skills, is it? You mentioned meta tools.
Right. Courageous leaders often develop a broad array of what Gulati calls meta tools. These aren't just specific skills, but more like ways of thinking, problem-solving approaches, cognitive strategies.
Okay, like mental frameworks.
Yeah, exactly. Think about NASA astronauts. They get as much training in mental endurance, decision-making under pressure, and teamwork as they do in the technical stuff. Or Helena Folks again at CVS. When facing complex challenges, she used tools like delegation and fostering transparent debate. She encouraged deep conversations about paradox and complexity to help her team find creative solutions together, rather than her just dictating answers.
Building the team's thinking toolkit, not just her own, makes sense. What about when things feel totally out of your control? External chaos.
That's where the third tactic under confidence comes in. focusing relentlessly on what is within your control. There's that famous football coach, Nick Saban. He teaches his players to focus intensely on the process, on how we're going to do it, not obsessing over the final score, which has external factors.
Control the controllables.
Precisely. Aloka Bajpai, the founder of India's travel site Ixigo, faced numerous near bankruptcies. Things looked dire externally, but he and his team kept focusing on their core mission, shipping innovative products. They made tough internal choices, sacrifices, but they centered on what they could directly influence: their product, their team effort, their resilience. They didn't get paralyzed by the market chaos they couldn't control.
Okay, focus on your own execution. That builds a sense of agency, even when the world is messy. Got it. Let's move to strategy 3. Strategy 3, take small steps. This one feels maybe a bit surprising. We often think of courageous action as these big, bold leaps.
Yeah, it does seem counterintuitive at first glance. But Gulati's research, drawing on work by people like Carl Weick, highlights this idea of sense-making. Courageous leaders often don't take the giant leap immediately into the unknown. They start with smaller, deliberate steps to gain clarity, to understand the situation incrementally.
So it's like testing the waters.
Kind of. The first tactic here is objective evaluation. A disruptive event happens, and instead of freezing or reacting emotionally, you practice a kind of mindfulness. You step back and objectively assess both the external situation and your own internal emotional response to it.
Okay, an example.
Think about Nohiro Masuda, the supervisor at the Fukushima Daini nuclear plant during the 2011 tsunami. Not the Daiichi plant that melted down, but Daini. They were hit by these massive 55-foot waves. The plant was only designed for 17-foot waves. Total chaos.
Unimaginable pressure.
Right. But instead of panicking, he and his team gathered around a whiteboard. They started objectively listing the problems, analyzing data, mapping potential system failures. They were trying to understand the reality of the situation before acting rashly.
Wow. Detached observation in a crisis. Okay, what's the next small step after evaluation?
It's about letting meaning emerge. You actively scour for information, even tiny cues or fragments of data trying to build an interpretation. You ask, what patterns are emerging? How does this connect to things we've seen before? Masuda, for instance, sent teams into incredibly dangerous areas just to inspect damaged equipment.
Aye.
Because his initial hypothesis was about power loss. He needed confirmation, needed data points to figure out alternative energy sources. It's about constantly drafting and redrafting an emerging story as new information trickles in. You embrace the ambiguity while seeking clarity.
Okay, so you gather clues, build a working theory, then what?
Then you interpret in motion. That's the third tactic. You act based on your current best hypothesis. But, and this is crucial, you keep your options open. You expose yourself to new information through action, but you don't commit irrevocably if you don't have to. Amazon calls this using two-way doors decisions you can reverse if they prove wrong.
Ah, so you act, learn, and pivot if needed.
Exactly. Masuda first tried to draw power from one specific building at the Daini plant. Didn't work, technical problems, so he pivoted. He shifted focus to the plant's single functioning generator, then even considered using a different reactor entirely. It was this iterative process, evaluate, hypothesize, act small, learn, adapt, that ultimately allowed them to save the Daini plant, avert the kind of disaster seen elsewhere at Fukushima Daiichi. It builds courage through learning and adaptation.
Small steps leading to massive outcomes. Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. What's strategy number 4? Strategy 4, find connection. This challenges that image of the lone hero, doesn't it? The idea that courage is something you do all by yourself.
It absolutely does. Gulati's research strongly suggests that courage is almost always a team sport. Behind pretty much every brave leader, you'll find a network. Supporters, yes, but also constructive critics.
So it's about your network. How does that help build courage?
Well, the first way is through allies providing emotional boosts. Just knowing you have people who believe in you, who affirm your identity and your purpose, that's huge. It provides crucial emotional support. Lee Nair, the CEO of Chanel, talks about how female family members and her mentor, who happened to be Indra Nooyi again, really instilled confidence in her when she was doubting herself early in her career.
What did Nooyi tell her?
Apparently, she advised Nair to focus on her strengths, what she brought to the table, rather than worrying about fitting some preconceived mold or focusing on limitations. That kind of encouragement gave her the push she needed to take on bigger, more challenging roles.
Having cheerleaders helps you feel capable. Makes sense. But connections are more than just emotional support, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's the second part. Accessing resources. Your network provides tangible help, knowledge, expertise, funding, introductions, you name it.
Okay, examples here.
Think back to Alok Bajpai at Ixigo, facing those near bankruptcies. It was his investors providing crucial bridge funding that kept the company alive during the really tough times. That's a tangible resource from his network.
Right, the safety net.
Exactly. Or Frances Haugen, the Facebook whistleblower again. When she decided to release those internal documents, she didn't do it entirely alone. She turned to organizations like Luminate and Whistleblower Aid for support, for resources, for protection. Your network offers that safety net, which definitely boosts your courage to act.
Okay, allies for support, network for resources. What's the third leg of this connection strategy?
This one is critical. Feedback, specifically constructive critics. It's vital to have people in your network who aren't just cheerleaders. You need people who will honestly assess your choices, challenge your assumptions, poke holes in your narratives, people who give you the unvarnished truth, even if it's uncomfortable.
The loyal opposition, kind of?
Sort of, yeah. Jürgen Vignudstorp, when he turned Lego around, famously said, "Listen to the complainer." He valued that critical feedback. And Larry Culp at GE is known for his Gemba walks, going directly to the factory floors to hear unfiltered feedback from frontline employees, not just relying on reports filtered up through management.
Why is that so important for courage?
Because it helps you reality test your plans. It helps validate your course of action, or just as importantly, it challenges you if you're heading down the wrong path. It prevents you from operating in an echo chamber, which can lead to disastrously brave but foolish decisions.
Getting diverse perspectives to ensure your bold move isn't just a blind one.
Yeah.
Okay, that's powerful. Really great stuff. If these strategies are resonating with you, if they're sparking some new ideas, go ahead and smash that like button. Let us know. And please, share your other opinions in the comments. How has connection helped or hindered your ability to act boldly? And don't forget to subscribe to the Other Opinion channel. Your support genuinely helps us keep exploring these vital topics. All right, we've covered narrative, confidence, small steps, and connection. Was it a fifth and final strategy? Strategy 5, stay calm. Okay, this sounds essential, but maybe easier said than done, especially when that freeze, flee, or fight response kicks in hard. This is about emotional regulation.
Exactly. To act courageously, especially under pressure, you have to be able to manage your own feelings. You need to keep a clear head when things are chaotic, when your primal instincts are screaming at you.
So how do you do that? What are the tactics?
Well, the first one sounds almost too basic, but it's fundamental. Self-care?
Like sleep and eating well.
Precisely. Adequate sleep, good nutrition, staying hydrated. You simply cannot think clearly or make sound, brave decisions if you're running on fumes. Chanel's Lena Nair puts it perfectly. You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first to have the energy to play all the roles that you do. It's not selfish. Gulati argues it's absolutely essential for sustained brave leadership.
Right. Can't be courageous if you're burned out. Okay, what else besides the basics?
Embracing rituals. This can significantly reduce anxiety and center you.
Rituals, like what?
Think about ancient warriors and their pre-battle rituals. They weren't just superstition. They helped prepare the mind, create focus, instill a sense of control. Steve Jobs had his simple daily ritual, asking himself that question in the mirror. If today was the last day of my life, would I be happy with what I'm about to do today?
That's centering.
Yeah. Or Ben Bernanke, when he was Fed chair, apparently always faced the clock during tense FOMC meetings. Just a small, personally meaningful action to ground himself. Howard Schultz, Starbucks founder, famously uses meditation. These rituals, whatever they are for you, help create a pocket of predictability and control in the midst of uncertainty.
Find your own grounding mechanism. I like that. Okay, self-care, rituals. What's the last piece of staying calm?
This one might be the most powerful cognitive tool. Reframing the situation.
Reframing, how does that work?
It means actively preempting fear by redefining the uncertainty you're facing. You consciously choose a different lens through which to view the challenge. Larry Fink, back at BlackRock, did this in one of his annual letters during a volatile period. He wrote something like, "We have lived through moments like this before, and somehow in the long run, we figure things out." That's reframing, acknowledging difficulty, but placing it in a larger, more manageable context.
It changes the emotional charge of the situation.
Exactly. Helena Folks, again from CVS, apparently makes a habit of asking what could go right, shifting focus from potential downsides to potential upsides. And Alok Bajpai at Ixigo during the COVID-19 outbreak, which devastated travel, he didn't just see crisis, he reframed it as an opportunity for consolidation and new growth. That mindset led them to make acquisitions and ultimately have a successful IPO post-pandemic. It's about acknowledging the dangers, absolutely, but consciously tempering your emotional reaction by adopting a broader, perhaps more optimistic, but definitely more proactive perspective.
Acknowledge the threat, but focus on the path forward. Wow. Okay. So there you have it. 5 really powerful actionable strategies to cultivate courage, drawn from Ranjay Gulati's research. 1. Creating those positive narratives. 2. Building specific confidence or self-efficacy. 3. Taking small, deliberate steps for sense-making. 4. Finding connection, allies and critics. And 5. Staying calm through self-care, rituals, and reframing. This whole deep dive makes it pretty clear, doesn't it? Bravery isn't some fixed trait you either have or you don't. It really does seem to be a skill, or maybe a set of skills, that we can all learn and practice and get better at. And that feels especially important in a world that seems to increasingly demand bold action over just, hesitating.
I think that's exactly right. And it raises a really important, maybe provocative question for you listening right now. Where in your own life or maybe in your work are you perhaps being just a little too cautious rather than too reckless? Gulati actually argues that most of us tend to err on the side of cowardice, not recklessness. We hesitate more often than we leap foolishly. So maybe consider one small step you could take this week, just one, using maybe one of these strategies we talked about to move past a point where you feel stuck or hesitant. What action, however minor it seems, could you take to embody just a little bit more boldness today or tomorrow?
It's a little more boldness. Yeah, that can definitely go a long way. A fantastic challenge to leave us with. Thank you so much for joining us on The Other Opinion for this deep dive into courage. If you enjoyed this conversation, if you found it valuable, please do like the video. Leave us a comment, share those other opinions, tell us how these strategies resonate, or maybe challenge them. And please subscribe to The Other Opinion channel to support what we do here. It really helps us continue these explorations. And maybe share this deep dive with someone you know who needs to hear it. Just one quick final note. This deep dive was produced by AI. Our aim is always to provide interesting information and different perspectives based on the source material. And while we strive for accuracy, based on those sources, some information might be incomplete or, occasionally even incorrect. So please, always do your own research and critical thinking.